Sick Harrison Price for Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. We're a presentation of Bet365. Check out Bet365's 3-goal early payout. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app today. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Matt Sick Harrison alongside Blake Price, Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things with intern Elijah Ford. We're coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio here at the Historic Wall Center. Visit shoptoyota.ca. Or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Needless to say, a show we didn't plan on doing and a show that nobody here wants to do as we mourn the loss of our friend and colleague, John Cheech Garrett, who passed away yesterday while on assignment in Salt Lake City, Utah, covering the Stanley Cup playoffs. Blake, I heard John Shorthouse this morning with Halford and Brough, our former colleagues at the radio station, talking about Cheech, his longtime broadcast partner. There was a lot of tears, needless to say. But there was also some levity and humor, because if you knew John Garrett, those two things were a part of his DNA. Those two things were front and center. Lots of smiles and lots of laughs. And, you know, Shorty told an amusing story about an encounter that Cheech had one day on the road in Nashville. And he prefaced it by saying, like, look, some people don't take this the wrong way. He would want me to do this. Like, that was the nature of his relationship with Shorty. And it was kind of the nature of his relationship with just about everybody in the Vancouver media.
He didn't want to make a big deal out of anything. He just wanted everybody to be happy, honestly.
Enjoy. Yeah.
And so I do believe and I don't know him as well as Shorty does, but I think he'd want everybody to think about him today with a smile on their face, as he always had on his face.
My goodness.
Like, I know we have said this about people in the past. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's what we wanted to believe, is that person who just passed has never had a bad day in his life. Mm-hmm. I'm sure John did, but man, he didn't let many people see it. He shone a bright light on the world whenever possible.
As authentic a person as you'd ever want to meet. What you saw is what you got on television. Like, that was John Garrett. There were a lot of people on this side of the camera who reveal certain parts of themselves, who have a on-air persona. John was just John. Mm-hmm. He came by it naturally. He came by it honestly. And so we're asking on our Pacific Toyota Dealers Daily poll question today, favorite part of a John Cheech Garrett broadcast, the food stories, and there were plenty, the hockey stories, and there were plenty, hockey analysis, or all of the above. And most people are voting all of the above, because that was the full package. When you sat down to watch a Canucks game with John Garrett on the call, you knew you were going to get a sample of all three, and you knew all three of them would brighten up and enlighten your day.
And I honestly, if we didn't have all of the above and we forced people to, I bet you hockey analysis would finish third.
It's
not. It's not because he didn't know the game. It's just he did it in a way that made it way more fun and accessible. And I know this is not an original thought, but you know, he didn't cover a lot of great Canucks hockey in the last 10 years, in the last 15 years, really. A lot of bad hockey, a lot of bad games, and he made them way more palatable. And not just with the food stories. Sure, that in a 6-1 loss, the odd food story is helping to fill some airtime, and it's fun. But he also filled that with relevant hockey stories as well, which at that point are important in a long season. And he was a genius in that. Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't mind watching the third. Obviously, people would have preferred wins, but given that that's what they were given in terms of content, you didn't mind staying to watch the end of the game if Cheech and Shorty were on their game.
Yeah. Well, and of course, some of the stories from his playing days in the National Hockey League and poking fun at himself.
In the WHA.
And then, of course, the WHA.
The Fighting Saints.
Even more so. I mean, just legendary stuff. And few wielded and told those stories better than John Garrett. So go ahead and vote on the Sekerson Price poll question at X and YouTube. I think it's fair to say we're both voting all of the above in this studio.
The poll question brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers, a Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. Put the show on. Get into that comfortable cockpit of the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid today and turn up the show and feel that great stereo giving you all these Cheech stories.
We'll try and do him justice here today with our own personal tribute. It is our top story today. John Cheech Garrett leaves us suddenly yesterday at age 74. A longtime Canucks TV color man was calling the Vegas-Utah series for Sportsnet. As many of you may know, we played golf after the show yesterday, and J-Pat mentioned, he's like, Garrett was booked but didn't show up on Donnie and Dolly yesterday. It's a little strange.
Not like him.
Not like him. And then when he didn't show up to join his colleagues for the ride to the rink, something was up. This morning, word came that he passed in Salt Lake City, and Canucks fans have lost a best friend. Cheech was a bright light, and his light was needed in this province during many a dark Canucks season. We talked in 2023 what a baffling decision it was from Sportsnet and the Canucks not to keep the partnership going with John Shorthouse and Dan Murphy together, given what they meant to British Columbians, how they navigated difficult times for this team and always made the telecast fun. John Garrett was a beautiful man. His spirit, his humanity shone through in every interaction. It was impossible not to smile or laugh in John's presence. There was forever a twinkle in his eye, and that twinkle was infectious. In a moment, Blake and I are going to share some personal stories about John. First, a look at the outpouring of affection for him. This is the National Hockey League and Commissioner Gary Bettman. The NHL family is stunned and saddened by the sudden passing of John Garrett, whose astute analysis took fans, particularly in Western Canada, inside our game for the last 4 decades. Gary would continue to say on a personal note, I always enjoyed catching up with John when our travels around the league intersected, as they did one last time on Friday night in Utah when he broadcast the Mammoth's first ever home playoff game. We send our deepest condolences to his family's friends around the game and his many fans. So nice of the commissioner and the National Hockey League head office to acknowledge Cheech's passing. Here's from Sportsnet, of course, his employer since 1998. It is with profound sadness we share the news of the sudden passing of John Garrett, a beloved colleague, friend, and one of the most familiar voices in Canadian hockey. Cheech was a legend. His warmth, humor, his genuine love for the game endeared him to fans and colleagues alike. He brought insight, authenticity, and heart to every broadcast. He will be remembered not only for his remarkable career, but for his kindness and joy he shared with everyone who had the privilege of knowing him. John will be missed immensely. Chris Cuthbert, who, of course, on the list of 40 play-by-play men.
Yeah.
Not a day I wouldn't smile just hearing the name Cheech until today. Heartbroken to learn of his passing. So many laughs, great memories, and life lessons. John Garrett was one of a kind. We'll all miss him. So I want to tell a couple of stories about Cheech here, where Blake and I were together with him. We did a couple of years of listener trips with the Vancouver Canucks back at our old radio station. So, text in, email in, I forget the particulars. You can win a trip to see a Canucks road trip with us, where we would sort of escort these listeners around. So the first year we went to New York City and Boston. Canucks played the Islanders, then the Rangers a night or two later, and then off to Boston. So it was a matinee game against the Islanders when they were playing in the Brooklyn Arena, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So we finished up. We get back to the hotel. We get changed. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like an NFL playoff game night because it was a Saturday in January or Sunday in January. And so the two of us and our producer, Mike Whittingham, get the word that Shorty, Murph, and Cheech are at a given bar in New York City. We show up to the bar. It's quite busy, but there is one table for us. It's a little bit apart from where the rest of the guys are sitting, but it's not just Cheech, Shorty, and Murph. It's like Red Hamilton and Patty O'Neill, Canucks equipment staff, a number of assistant coaches there, some Canucks support staff. And, you know, the one thing about support staff is they can be a little bit leery of media, right? Because they're not sure, okay, you know, is anything here going to be reported? And John came over and he sat with us, and it was sort of like his way of telling the people who didn't know us as well, hey, these guys are okay. And so we had a meal. I'm going to guess it was a gluttonous meal.
Something fried. Yes.
Had some beers and watched the playoff game. A couple of nights later, we're in Boston at a very fancy hotel. I want to say it was a Ritz-Carlton. And we saddle up to the lobby bar, and sure enough, there's Cheech. And we start chatting with Cheech. And then, like, an impeccably dressed guy, like full three-piece, like the type of guy who looks like he drinks at a Ritz-Carlton hotel lobby bar, walks in and takes the seat next to us. And of course, it's John Garrett, so we make friends with him. And it turns out he's got a very, very big job in the state of Massachusetts and is like a big political organizer and things like that. And we're trading stories. And I'll never forget that was the moment John picked. He was like, did I ever tell you guys what I did during the 04 lockout? We're like, no, Cheech, what? And like thinking it would be a fun, amusing John Garrett story. And he said, well, I went back to Queen's University and I finally finished my English degree. And I can remember being taken aback. But I wanted to stress that today. Like, John played a punching bag on TV, taking he played the dumb guy on TV a lot. This was a very learned and well-read person. He was highly, highly intelligent. Didn't always show it, certainly didn't flaunt it. But this was a guy who could hang in all sorts of company. The next year we go on this trip, and it's California. And Sharks, Kings, Ducks. And so the night after the Kings game, which I think was a Saturday night, I believe your boy Nikolai Goldobin scored his beautiful breakaway goal in that game. So the three of us and our two audience members, listeners, shout out Mike Hollander. We still communicate with Mike. He was on the lucky contest winner, his son David. How we get into Anaheim? We hop on the media bus with Shorty, Murph, and we go and sit at the back of the bus. And sure enough, the bus gets going, and here comes John Garrett walking down the aisle to meet our contest winners. Carmen was on the trip. He's got beers in hand. He's passing them out, and he's like the host. He's regaling. And that was a special drive down to Orange County as we traded fun and stories with John.
I don't think I was ever formally, for the first time, introduced to John Garrett.
No.
Because we were always around each other, but because me doing pregame for the Canucks, I was at the arena for puck drop earlier than he was because I had to be on the air 90 minutes before he was. And so we were always sort of around each other, but really didn't sit down to talk for a long time. And then I started working for the Giants, doing play-by-play for the Giants. And I don't know how much discourse we had before this moment, but I get this text that I don't think I got till after the game. He's like, Blake, been driving around doing errands all evening and was listening to your game. Doing a great job. He's like, just remember, though, it's radio. There's no score bug. I was popping it out. I didn't know where we were in the period or the score. Got to say the period and the score more. You're on radio. I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah.
Good tips. And, I was very green. That was my first regular play-by-play gig. And I had also already come from TSN on the TV side of things. So it was good instruction. This is radio, not a visual medium. Got to be descriptive about everything beyond just the play. And I remember just thinking, he didn't need to do that.
No.
Like he's ready. He's a busy guy that day. He was doing errands, rarely at home. Took the time, didn't see anybody else as a threat, and gave me feedback. And I never forgot that. And I just today went surfing through our texts and just to see any. And for some reason, 3 years ago, we were wondering maybe when did he fully retire from the Whitecaps or from the Canucks gig?
2023.
I thought it was from 22. Anyway, I was asking him about that list, and I said, "Well, I know you guys have talked about the list. How many names are on the list again?" He said 40, and he sent me the handwritten list that you see people. And he goes, "Alas, no Blake Price."
Ah, yes, that is.
And
I
I
can
never got
absolutely hear that coming out of his mouth.
And I never got the chance to call a game with him, and I wish I had.
Well, like you, Blake, I don't remember the first time I met him, but.
You're just fast friends with him.
Well,
immediately.
I felt like I knew him all my life.
Yeah.
He was that sort of person, like just so inviting. He brought you into his world immediately.
Yeah, warm and inviting from second one.
Exactly. John treated everybody the same, no matter their station in life. It was a matter of character and integrity, and he had both in spades. He was a terrific professional, the best of teammates. That trademark self-deprecating humor was his defining characteristic as a broadcaster. Has anybody had more fun being the punchline?
I saw the clip today of him ruining, quote unquote, Roberto Luongo's shutout.
Yeah.
And saying you can hit me upside, because he saw it. He's a very superstitious guy.
Yep.
He said the word shutout with a minute and a half remaining or whatever. And he said, "You slap me upside the head if they score here." Seconds later, they score.
Yeah.
And they have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
And Cheech says to Shorty, or no, Shorty says to Cheech, "Which side of your head do you want me to hit?"
Yeah.
He goes, "The right side."
I love, like, Shorty would barb him, and there would always be a little punctuation. Yes. Before they moved on to the play-by-play. Whether it was playing career, his broadcast missteps, his eating habits, his affinity for ketchup, there was no airs or ego about the man, just relatability and a deep recognition that we weren't splitting atoms here. We were doing sports. It was meant to be
Have
fun.
some fun.
Yeah.
Have some fun.
And some old audience members of our show may remember a long time ago, I did this screed on our old radio show about ketchup. I called it there's John in China. I called ketchup a masking agent so children would eat their meat, and I questioned the palate of any adult who continued to use ketchup on anything. So typical radio bit designed to wake up the audience, right? Kick the inbox in the tail. A little something different on a slow news date. Well, my next visit to Rogers Arena, I see John in the hallway, and I get a, "Mr. Sakaris, I need to have a word with you." Ketchup. I resembled that remark. Oh, my God. We laughed. There was a night in San Jose where he made sure to order me an extra side of ketchup, right? Or he'd hit me with a, "Matt, are you using your ketchup? Can you pass the ketchup?" It was our running gag. And John had a lot of running gags. In fact, to know him almost felt like a gag, that you were in on jokes that others weren't, and it made you feel special. And that's because he was special.
Memory like a trap, so he had running jokes with
gosh.
everybody because he could remember what the theme was with every given person.
Yeah. Yeah. Just when I thought the ketchup thing was, a thing of the past, there'd be a conversation and a barb about ketchup thrown my way.
Yeah.
It was just, and the timing, the comedic timing, just absolutely spot on.
So good.
He played 13 professional seasons as a goalie, for the Vancouver Canucks, Quebec Nordiques, and Hartford Whalers in the NHL. He began broadcasting in 1986. Started in Sportsnet, of course, first with Hockey Night in Canada, and then started at Sportsnet in 1998, and for parts of 5 decades entertained and educated us through his television work. He was as classy could be upon his final regional broadcast, Canucks broadcast on Sportsnet 3 years ago. I know it hurt him deeply to have to leave that show, but he talked about the enjoyment of working the job. He shouted out his colleagues, but mostly he shouted out the fans for the 20 years of gathering together. Also, the masks that John wore over his career, like the perfect symmetry of that era of the elaborately painted masks and John in them as a Canuck, as a Whaler, as a Nordique, and of course during his time in the WHA. I'm glad we unmasked the man after his playing days were over and got to know that smiling guy in the middle of the screen.
And man, did he live a life, and taken too soon at 74, for sure. He had years left to give and way more joy to spread. But this guy, honestly, I think a biopic might be necessary for John Garrett. You said he played 13. It was actually 15 years in professional hockey because he played a year in the Central Hockey League coming out of junior. He played half a season in the American League and then half a season in the old Western League as well. Like before he then got to the WHA, where he played for 6 years before he got to the NHL. Like, this is a guy who had like a minor league baseball experience in hockey. And you don't get that anymore. Like, you really don't. You're not going to get a guy who plays in 4 other pro leagues in North America before he plays in the show. Like, it's not going to happen.
Well, and he was kind of the Bob Uecker of hockey. Right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
The indistinguished playing career, although that's quite a few years. But someone who walked right out of that career and into a booth and was just an absolute natural.
But all those experiences molded him into the person that he was.
Absolutely. I mean, I sometimes, when I talk to young people about doing a sports talk show, and you and I have had this conversation, I say to them, like, go out and report first. I couldn't imagine doing a show like this without an experience of reporting and going out and getting those stories and getting experience on the job. But you're right. Like, John's vagabond playing career.
Complete vagabond.
He was clever enough to turn it into broadcast magic.
Yeah.
Like Uecker did for all those years behind the mic calling Milwaukee Brewers games. John Murdoch Garrett leaves us and leaves behind his wife Sharon, his daughters Krista and Sarah, grandchildren Isaiah and Jada. They should be thanked for sharing him with us and know that we're all richer for having known him. Okay, well, unfortunately, the sadness continues here for Vancouver's sports community.
In a different sense,
profound loss of John Garrett to the potential loss of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, because that got real yesterday following a report in The Athletic. This is Tom Bogart, MLS insider for The Athletic. A special committee of MLS owners met to discuss the future of Vancouver Whitecaps, including the possibility of relocation. Sources tell Paul Tenorio and I. Las Vegas, the chief option discussed. MLS has had discussions with a group looking to bring a team to Las Vegas. Bogart, on a hit with CBS Galazzo, would call the situation bleak here in Vancouver. And it was last week we showed you those renderings of what is planned for Las Vegas beyond Allegiant Stadium for the Raiders and the new A's ballpark, that they're looking to build another 40 to 50,000 seat facility that would host soccer and concerts And goodness gracious, the building that's going on and the sports that's going on in Las Vegas these days. The Whitecaps provided a statement following the Athletic report. Those of you on visual platforms will have it. Let me just read it for those of you on pod. The Whitecaps ownership group has played a significant role in growing the game in Vancouver and across Canada. However, stadium economics, scheduling restrictions, and a lack of government and corporate support have created ongoing structural challenges that make it difficult to establish a viable path forward for the club. We remain focused on supporting the club and identifying a sustainable long-term solution, and our preference is to find a path that allows the Whitecaps to continue to grow and succeed in Vancouver. At the same time, we have a responsibility to ensure the long-term health of the league and its clubs, and we will evaluate all options, including interest that has been expressed in the club from other markets and investor groups. Let's just break this down for a second. Mike, leave it on up there, if you don't mind. It is true that Greg Kerfoot and Jeff Mallett have played a significant role in growing soccer in Vancouver and across Canada, even dating back before the MLS Whitecaps. Greg was, basically the financier of the Canadian women's national team for a period of time. And, of course, they have also owned the women's Whitecaps team as well. In the days that follow, we'll talk about all the community and grassroots work that the Whitecaps do beyond just the MLS team.
Helping the Rise get going too.
Right, exactly. Stadium economics we've been through in the past. It is just very difficult to make money at BC Place as a tenant. Scheduling restrictions, Don Garber has certainly moaned about that in the past, that the Whitecaps aren't given enough dates for schedule flexibility for not only their sake, but the rest of MLS, which of course has to abide by whatever dates they get for games in Vancouver, although it does surprise me. Like, I get the Whitecaps want to play Wednesdays or Saturday, Sundays, but, it's not like BC Place is filled a lot of the time. Like, I'd be down for more of those Friday night games like we saw a week ago. Anyways, lack of government and corporate support have created ongoing structural challenges. Here's where I find the Whitecaps losing me a little bit. Government is stepping up here. We'll get into that in a second. I realize there are not a lot of corporate head offices here, but that's on you, Whitecaps. Like, you have to do better selling sponsorships. That's an operational matter. I realize it's a tougher go in Vancouver than it is in a place like Toronto where you're, chock a block of corporate head offices. But there are a lot of cities in MLS and in other big four sports leagues that aren't chock a block in corporate head offices, and they face the same challenges that you face in terms of selling those sponsorships. So I thought that was a little bit of wine, frankly, that I could have done without.
I'll say this though too, is they've been around for how long? 14 years?
15, yeah.
15. So half of that almost, like when you think about the pandemic striking in 2020, we're talking almost 7 years now later, in very uncertain economic times. Like the world has not been booming basically post-pandemic.
No.
And so it has not been ideal to end, but it's coincided with the Whitecaps figuring out their soccer leadership. So the Whitecaps have been, and their staff, the Whitecaps have been a crackerjack franchise for basically all that time. And yet they have not been able to enjoy the fruits of those labors because it is Vancouver and there's less corporate dollars to begin with. And this has not been an economic landscape that has seen copious amounts of corporate spending on this sort of thing, as opposed to the 20 years before.
But again, there's a lot of markets in the same boat.
No, for sure.
Who aren't looking to move their team.
Yeah.
I saw Jazz Johal tweet from CKNW. I'm a bit surprised the Whitecaps were so forthcoming about today's news in The Athletic. No viable offer has emerged to keep the club in Vancouver. 100 conversations, 0 takers. If local money doesn't show up fast, this team is gone. Yeah, put the statement back up again for a second, Mike, because I want to fixate on the final line here, or the penultimate line. The part about, sorry, my eyes are filling.
You're giving me Russell Brand vibes here.
Well, no, it's.
You want a Bible to flip
no.
through?
My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. I was trying to read it off the monitor. It's too far away. I've got to get it on my screen here. Oh, my goodness. Getting old sex. No, but including interest that has been expressed in the club from other markets and investor groups, it is an exceedingly rare statement to see in print from a professional sports club to acknowledge that you have bidders who want to buy you and move you to another market. That is sort of the code red level 10 indicator of how urgent this situation is. And for some, may in fact just be a pretext that the hay is in the barn and that this team is already on its way out, particularly when you couple it with the Bogart report about MLS owners meeting to discuss the future and Las Vegas discussed with a bid in play. Now, we'd like to be solution-based on this program as best possible. I think that's how we have approached this Whitecaps story from the jump, even though it has been ominous and specter, even though it has been difficult to see final solutions with regard to a permanent new soccer-specific facility. Let's just go over here for a second the important context. So, of course, years and years ago, Greg Kerfoot was trying to build a waterfront stadium, soccer-specific stadium, on land he owns down in the rail yards, Gastown. Wasn't able to get a deal done. He was looking to trade land with the federal government at the port. Anyways, deal wasn't able to get done. So the next thing you know, the Whitecaps begin in the temporary Empire Stadium, which, of course, the province put together as they were renovating BC Place, and then moved into BC Place. Almost immediately, you started hearing whining and moaning from the soccer crowd about, oh, it's turf, how terrible it's turf, blah, blah, blah. Of course, BC Place isn't specifically designed for soccer. To me, it's still a terrific facility. I mean, it's good enough for FIFA. It's good enough for the IOC. How's it not good enough for itty-bitty Major League Soccer? But that has less to do than the facility itself and more about the revenue streams that aren't available to Whitecaps ownership because they don't own the stadium, because it is provincially owned and operated at a higher expense than it would be if it was somebody's skin in the game, if this was a private operator who was running it as a business, as opposed to it being run via a crown corporation. So Don Garber, MLS commissioner, has said, and this guy asked the question at that roundtable last year when Garber came to town, that BC Place is no longer viable, period, even with a better lease deal.
There's no blue sky scenario.
That it must be a soccer-specific stadium. This is what this is the MLS model. This is what they're moving towards. But if we're looking at...
Axel Schuster walked that back 2 weeks ago.
Well, I mean, if it comes from the commissioner's mouth, it comes from the commissioner's mouth.
But I would say the opposite. The commissioner doesn't run the franchise. The guy that runs the franchise is saying we can make it work at the stadium.
Okay. But Garber is saying we don't want to play in BC Place. We want the Whitecaps and every franchise to have a soccer-specific stadium with grass.
Yeah. But, I mean, they're in a long line of stadiums that don't fit that bill.
Yes. So
it's not like this is the last team.
It is somewhat hypocritical. There are other teams that play in multi-purpose stadiums. Seattle down the way, Atlanta, and Mercedes-Benz
one of the most
stadiums.
Atlanta's one of the highest run franchises in Major League Soccer. They play in a football stadium.
So one of two things: either Don Garber is a hypocrite, or he just doesn't want to be in Vancouver. That's my conclusion on him putting a stake in the ground, saying no to BC Place as a long-term home. So, as we know, the long-term big solution is a soccer-specific stadium in Hastings Park. The Vancouver Whitecaps were given permission by the city in December with a year-long memorandum of understanding. Go on out and find a developer who is willing to develop the former Hastings Racecourse, turn it into a mixed-use commercial, residential, entertainment property as we look to do something with that site, which no longer has horse racing there. That's the big solution. But in terms of a temporary solution, a stay of execution, if you will, If the Whitecaps were granted the rights to operate BC Place by the province, replacing PAFCO on that facility, does that buy them time through the itty-bitty mini 2027 MLS season, because they're doing a mini season before going to that full-length summer to spring season? That takes us into late 2027 to find a solution. Is it possible, because Don Garber has talked, and it was kind of a throwaway comment, but for those who know sports business circles, the money is in operating a stadium. The money is not in operating a club. If the province and Premier David Eby were willing to turn over operations of the stadium to the Whitecaps and or MLS in some sort of partnership, could that be a potential stay of execution and buy them time, Blake?
Absolutely, but it needs to be full and utter, right? Like that, and for people listening to that going, why would they do that? That sounds crazy. No, it happens. Toronto, Portland, two examples off the top of my head in Major League Soccer where government owns, it's publicly owned stadiums run by the franchise,
because
by the owners.
Because those jurisdictions have decided we don't want to be in the stadium operation game as a public entity.
Yeah.
Like, we're here to make laws and fix roads and do all the things that governments do, and stadium operations isn't part of that program.
And as Patrick Johnson has pointed out in his articles over the last few months, there's an even better parallel for a team in trouble that asked to do this exact thing in Eintracht Frankfurt, I believe. And it did turn them around. They did find a way better way to make the sausage, and they make a lot more money and have now launched and have been financially viable ever since. So there's proof of concept there as well.
There is also a good news story for Whitecaps supporters, and that is the Columbus Crew that were all set to leave to Austin until the fans started making noise. There were lawsuits involved. The league didn't really have the stomach to go to court and go through discovery on what could be potentially embarrassing situations for them. And look, if you're sitting there at home asking, how can MLS franchises be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, you are not alone. There are a lot of people that have been quite suspect of the MLS business model for an awfully long time. The phrase Ponzi scheme has been used in print probably more than Don Garber ever wanted to read it, because people look at it and say, and for us here in Vancouver, and particularly of late with the Whitecaps, you're talking of crowds 25, 27,000 people. That is not the case for a lot of MLS franchises. In a lot of cases, they're like 8,000, 10,000 shy of that per game. So those are your ticket sales. Okay, maybe you got a better stadium deal with better stadium revenues. Fair enough. But it's not like MLS is a broadcast property like the other big four and is deriving these massive television payouts like you see in the NFL or like you see in the NHL with both regional and national payouts. So a lot of people are sitting around going, how in the hell are these MLS teams valued so richly by some of these independent services when they simply do not have the audience or the revenue streams of the other big North American leagues? That fair enough, but the fact of the matter is, if there's a guy in Vegas who's willing to pay $500 million for the Vancouver Whitecaps to set them up in Vegas, then that is what they are worth.
Okay, so
there is a finite number of professional sports franchises available in North America. And as we saw when Steve Ballmer, the Microsoft billionaire, bought the Clippers for $2 billion, people went, I can't believe this. That's the second team in Los Angeles, and he's paying that kind of freight for them when nobody thought an NBA team was worth $2 billion. That dynamic is out there, and that is something that is going to influence these proceedings.
Now, let's take the other side of things. Reasons to be skeptical of everything that you're seeing, all the doom and gloom that you're seeing. One is this. The two cities that are mentioned most are Phoenix and Las Vegas. We remember how difficult it is to build something in Phoenix. See the Coyotes and their attempts to get.
Can they just lop the roof off of Glendale and play at an 18,000-seat former hockey arena? That's not feasible.
Vegas right now is finally building the baseball stadium. That was a very contentious thing to be built there, having already built a hockey arena and a football stadium the size of Allegiant. And now they want to build something else. Like the voters, the residents of Las Vegas were 50-50 split on whether or not to help out. Both of those public monies went into both of those stadiums. They are tired of footing the bill.
There were some nervous times on the baseball stadium.
I find it really hard to believe. But even if you believe it can be done, I mean, because of the debate that will be raging on to build that stadium, even if it ultimately got greenlit, I mean, we're talking 5 years till you're sitting in a seat there. Minimum, probably more like 7 after all the zoning and all. So Major League Baseball gets the black eye of having the A's play in Sacramento for year upon year.
3 years.
Does Don Garber, and I don't know what Don Garber's negotiating plan is here, and there's a lot of rumors about Don Garber's future with Major League Soccer that he may be walking away. Again, I have no idea if that's true or not.
He's been there for the jump 30 years.
I have no idea if that's true or not. But if that's true, is this how he would like the legacy to go? Mm-hmm. Not to mention, folks, is the best business plan for Major League Soccer to be, what, the 5th franchise in? They have a WNBA team, don't they? Do they have a WNBA team?
If not, they're getting one, I believe.
Yeah. And the NBA will beat them to it. So you're going to be 5th or 6th to arrive in the market. That's your business plan.
Not only to a market, to the most transient market in the United States. The population turns over in Las Vegas more quickly than in any other city. And so you have fewer people rooted to the community. Oftentimes they come from other areas of the United States looking to seek their millions. Oftentimes they bring their own sports allegiances.
And a competitive ticket for the new Major League Soccer season for all of those teams except for the baseball team. Mm-hmm. You're competing against the hockey team, the NBA team, the WNBA team, and the football team.
And you're also competing versus the entertainment capital of the
Everything
world, where
else.
on any given night on the strip, you have shows that you just can't see anywhere else, or artists doing residencies that would sell out arenas and stadiums anywhere else in the world.
So
not to mention all those slot machines and poker and everything else that people go to Las Vegas for.
So my point is that even if you could just, I dream of Jeannie, blink this into existence, they might want to do that. It is so messy to get from A to, in their case, Z. I don't see a clean path for them to do it. Like, it's going to look really ugly. They're going to be playing at a temporary facility in the desert heat. Like, it doesn't make a ton of sense. At the very least, it should buy the Whitecaps more time than it feels like is happening. Since you started the show, I'll bail you out here because Mayor Ken Sim has put forth a statement as well. It goes on about how it's a complex business. City of Vancouver's done its part to create a path forward for the team's future here by offering prime space at Hastings Park for the Whitecaps to construct a new stadium and entertainment district. Now we face the difficult part. BC Place is owned and operated by the provincial government. In fact, it's the only stadium owned and operated by a government found anywhere in MLS. In order for the team to stay in Vancouver, the Whitecaps and province must sign a bridge deal that will allow BC Place to become viable in the near term while a new stadium can be designed and built.
There you go.
That's why today we're calling on the team's ownership to publicly and clearly articulate what they need to stay here in Vancouver, and we are calling on the provincial government to come to the table and make that a reality. To Vancouver Whitecaps fans, the Southsiders, and all the supporters groups, we need you to keep the fight going. We need you to stay strong. Losing the Whitecaps is not an option.
Okay, so a few things there. I think the mayor and his advisors now realize the awkward position he's put himself in by being the full face of this MLB franchise while the Whitecaps linger. So I do think there's some politics behind that.
There a little
yeah,
bit. But it's a strong statement. That's a good one.
And secondly, he's not wrong that the city has done their part. Mm-hmm. Thirdly, that stops a little bit short of saying, hey, province, PAFCO, just turn over operations to the Whitecaps. But that's what he's getting at far as
I think so, yeah.
I can tell. And there was one other observation. Can you bring it back, sort of the middle part of the statement, middle to end part of the statement? Ownership. I mean, I think ownership for the most part has clearly articulated. Yeah, I mean, we know it's a new soccer-specific stadium at Hastings Park. That's what we know.
I don't think that's what he meant. I think he means with regards to BC Place or the interim years. Like, what do you need to be comfortable enough here to move forward?
If you're talking interim years to buy time to get a stadium done at Hastings Park, then I hear you. But again, as a long-term permanent home, Don Garber and MLS has said no to this. This is the same power play they ran on Columbus. No, your stadium's too bad. No, we need a new soccer-specific stadium. So, a stay of execution, I think, is the right phrase here. Is there something that can be done with the Caps operating beast? Would that be enough? I think that's the question that we need Whitecaps ownership to answer, and we have invited Jeff Mallett on this program. Jeff's joined us in the past. I sure hope Jeff can see fit to join us again. That's the question that Whitecaps ownership has to answer. Okay, Garber once mentioned running BC Place. If we give you guys the operational rights to BC Place, which of course would include a naming partner, right? That's one thing that is an instant injection of money here. And for those of you who don't remember, provincial government, going back to the Christy Clark days, looked at putting a stadium naming rights up for tender for BC Place. They backed off a little. They saw value in keeping it as BC Place that was branding for the province. John Horgan's government was looking at it. In fact, there was commissioned a study, a feasibility study, something like that, for putting BC Place naming rights, again, back up for tender. A few weeks later, the pandemic hit. Needless to say, stadium naming rights went way down the priority list, and rightfully so. And that sort of died on the vine as the Horgan government dealt with the pandemic and the aftermath. Have we heard from David Eby on that? But look,
I can't remember.
It's something we've been saying on this show since we learned the Whitecaps were for sale, Blake, going back a year or so. Why does the province operate this thing via PAFCO? Is it not just an extra layer of expense for the BC taxpayer? And can somebody in the private sector who actually runs stadiums on a day-to-day basis do it more efficiently? And then secondly, why don't we just, at one point it was going to be TELUS something, right? There's even rumors that there's a sign somewhere in storage that would call it TELUS BC Place or whatever the case may be. How has that not happened? Even apart from the Whitecaps, Blake, given the financial plight of the province right now, how are you not selling naming rights to BC Place? You looked at what these naming rights go for.
And it's not all created equal, of course, because how many times it gets mentioned on broadcasts figures into it, and also just public visibility. If you're in a suburban stadium, like a lot of these American stadiums are, you get naming rights for it. That's great. Like, no one's walking past it to see it. So you're only getting the broadcast mentions, basically, and all the visibility there. This is BC Place smack dab in the middle of Vancouver, and it's the subject of every skyline photo that you see about Vancouver. That's where that sign will be. So to me,
it's the crown of Vancouver.
Yeah. So to me, this one gets to the top end.
What's that? $5 million a year?
To me, that's the baseline now of what it would be. Bell Center in Montreal, downtown, a shrine.
Yep.
22 years ago, 24 years ago, 2002, I believe.
Well, it went from Molson to Bell.
Bell Centre. 20-year deal signed for $100 million.
Yep.
So that's 5 years or $5 million per year. Mm-hmm. But that's signed in 2002. Yep. So to me, this is baseline. It's $5 million a year.
All right, moving on. I know a lot of you were wondering about Ryan Reynolds, of course. Van City Reynolds owns the Wrexham team, and him and a group put in a bid for the Ottawa Senators. Here's one of the tweets. Buy the club in your own backyard and keep them in Vancouver. There are some similarities with the Senators in terms of it was going to be very expensive, and you had to have a new permanent home plan going forward. Ryan Reynolds has done very well for himself on screen and in business. I would still be somewhat surprised if he's the money guy.
He's not the money guy. No,
he would need
but he knows money guys.
He does know money guys.
So that's the difference, is that he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to put too much of his own dosh on the line here to make this work. But could he be the kind of guy that knows people? Yes. I do want to get to one other thing about the stadium here quickly, Matt.
Okay.
And you say there's no way they could stay BC Place. I disagree.
Well, I'm only saying that because the commissioner has put that stake in the ground, Blake.
But things change. And again, the team has already walked that back. If you got full control of the stadium.
But it's not their call, Blake. It's the MLS commissioner and the board. Like, the board is saying here, no, we don't want to play in facilities like this anymore, or we're only going to make a few exceptions like Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The board is saying, and Don Garber is doing their bidding, we're not playing in that stadium in particular, and in part because we don't get dates, in part because it's turf, in part because it isn't soccer-specific. The model for this league is soccer-specific stadiums.
So what I'm about to say controls two of it. If you run this building, guess what? You get the dates. You've changed the calendar. You're not competing against the Lions. You get your dates.
You assign the Lions games at that dates at that point.
But the Lions, they're not going to be upset. They're not competing with the Whitecaps for the weekends anymore, right? And secondarily, rather than build a stadium and all the problems that can go from day one with building a brand new district out there at the PNE, do you invest in somehow, and I'm sure the science is there, to put a grass surface down at BC Place that is coverable for conventions and the like?
Like they have at Glendale in the football stadium there for the Arizona
That's
Cardinals.
a tough one because they just roll the whole damn thing out the stadium. You don't have the space here. You'd have to be more. You couldn't.
What is it? The Bernabeu that has it?
That's
that
pretty
up?
Convoluted as well.
Okay.
I wonder if there's more science there that can be done. Anyway, I don't think that costs you $1 billion to do that. So for a way cheaper price, find a way to get grass in there. This is a World Cup stadium.
It's a IOC opening and closing ceremony stadium as well.
Yeah, like to say it's not a soccer-specific stadium, I think this summer's going to change that.
Still not soccer-specific, but okay.
Very suitable.
Let's hear from some fans here. This tweet caught my attention. Vancouver Whitecaps are at peak attendance. City has offered them extremely valuable land for a new stadium. Province has offered them free rent and concession revenue. The only pressure point is the owner's desire to cash out while value is at its highest around the World Cup. Look, Kerfoot and Mallet have been trying to sell this team for, April, for 16, 17 months now. Mm-hmm. Recognize the World Cup is coming up, and soccer is hitting a high point here in Canada, but I don't think that's the only driver here. If it is a driver, I think it is much about MLS and its board and Commissioner Garber. This tweet from Anna, I've seen Anna over the years on social media, a diehard Caps fan. It's fine. We only supported this team for 15 years with our blood, sweat, tears, and money through absolute mediocrity, but sure, move them to the desert where no one gives a fuck so some rich bastards can get even richer. Makes total sense. I hear you, Anna. That's why we call them the greedy 32 in the NHL. They're billionaires. And they need more millions.
But again, the rules that govern stadium being built here also apply elsewhere. And the reason why it's tough to build a stadium is it's so damn expensive and people look for handouts. And again, both Arizona and Nevada are sick and tired of building other people's sports stadiums. Mm-hmm. To think that it's just a slam dunk that they go down there.
Well, the baseball team in Arizona, you wonder about in its facility, which is now aged. The basketball arena in Phoenix is one of the worst facilities I've ever been in. I can't believe they're still there. Last time I was there was 20 years ago.
Like, of course, the league and to a lesser degree the Whitecaps want to use that as leverage, but I believe it when I see it.
The other problem Arizona has is if you're not getting the Canadian visitors like you are accustomed to, let alone if Canadians start selling their Arizona real estate. We'll see.
Yeah.
This from Ben Steiner. Southsider supporters have a call to action for members to continue to hashtag Save the Caps campaign from matches. The Whitecaps don't play another home game until August 1st. Yes, Rob Williams weighing in. The timing of this is so messed up. The Whitecaps have never been more popular. We're preparing to host the FIFA World Cup in a month and a half. FIFA delegates, and there's 1,600 of them, are flying into Vancouver from all over the world this week for the FIFA Congress. but we're losing our MLS team. It's just a horrible look for the city, for this ownership group, and for MLS.
And that's been part of, again, my sort of really moments in this whole process. This city's hosting FIFA Congress.
Yes.
This city's
Which Victor Montagliani, FIFA vice president, worked hard to make sure happen.
The city's hosting the World Cup and is the biggest, brightest stadium to do. Like, it'll look amongst the best, I think, at the World Cup this year.
Absolutely.
It will look amongst the best.
I just hope Don Garber shows his face here during World Cup and somebody asks him, Don, stadium seems okay for a global audience.
I
today.
just find it hard to believe that the league is going to pull out of this city with this history, with this fan support, to take a flyer on what may or may not happen building-wise and support-wise in the desert.
50-plus years of history with this club, as Axel Schuster always says. It's not just a professional club playing once a week. This is an important entity in our community, and we'll get into grassroots and academy activities, and of course, the other thing is
the national team.
You know, it's one of the best commercial markets in North America for soccer, and has been for a half century.
And perhaps we've
in terms of fan support,
we've stumbled upon it here. Like, I wonder if these two major points. Yes, Don Garber has talked tough. Yes, there's tons of fan support, and it's absolutely a soccer city. I wonder if that's why he's talking tough. Is that he knows that this is a soccer city. He knows that there will be an outcry, and he's hopeful that by doing that, and this may be attaching too much to it, maybe, but maybe he's doing all this to light the biggest fire under the city possible, to get the most out of both the public, public sector and the private sector. Maybe. It's a theory.
Needless to say, it's all firefighters on deck, including the volunteers at this point, if that's the aim. And then lastly, this from our friend Mike Martinego, who's a huge soccer guy and Whitecaps supporter. What's funny and sad about the Whitecaps responding to this reporting in this manner they have, is they push to sell tickets for last Saturday's game. They now don't play at home for over 3 months, and then go, by the way, it's not looking good. I hear what Mike is saying. I also think the club was in a catch-22 on this. Like, what are you going to do? Not push and promote a first-place team to sell tickets?
Yeah.
I mean, I recognize that it leaves a bit of a bad taste in people's mouth that 27,000 sellout showed up on Saturday and that there was this hard push to sell all these tickets. And now you respond so honestly and bleakly about that report. I get it. I just don't know what other avenues were available to them. I mean, their interest is in selling tickets. The city's interest and the fans' interest is to selling tickets and showing what great support this team has in this community. So, a lose-lose scenario there. Okay, we'll talk more about that big baseball story from Gary Mason, the Globe and Mail, later in the program. Let's just get into some Canucks GM business here. Dollywall mentioned the relationship between Aquilini and Marcus Naslund. Wondered about the ex-Canuck captain coming home to the front office. I mean, we went through the same exercise a few weeks ago when he did that card signing, came to Vancouver for that card signing. He does have managerial experience over in Sweden, at Modo. Frank Saravelli has added the name of New York Rangers assistant general manager Ryan Martin as a candidate, so I believe we're now up to 5 confirmed candidate. And this was amusing last night. Taj, he's such a shit disturber. Taj tweets to Dan Milstein, the player agent, hopefully you get an interview to the GM position. And Milstein replies, thanks for the love, but y'all hire and fire GMs like it's speed dating. I'll pass on becoming the next speed bump. Oh, boy, a player agent saying that. I mean, maybe that's related to asking some of his clients, Kuzmenko, to waive trade protection and things like that. Or maybe that's Dan just being funny after a cocktail or two. Or maybe that's a signal that, hey, this franchise not run to the level where I'm comfortable putting clients anymore. And Pinchuk is one of his clients who signed with Nashville yesterday.
I mean, we've wondered, though, if the Canucks are getting a reputation. I think there's another bit of evidence.
Well, although I will say, I mean, they don't turn over GMs as quickly as they turn over coaches. And, boy, Dan, if you want to see turnover, like look at the support staff year to year at Rogers Arena. turns over quite quickly as well. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta. And if you haven't heard, 1 week from today, yes, join David Quadrelli, Harmon Dial, and special guests for an on-location stream of the 2026 Draft Lottery coming your way Tuesday, May 5th. Convo having a live show right there from inside Greta. They'll be breaking down the Draft Lottery in real time, reactions, giveaways, everything you need. As the future of Vancouver hockey starts to take shape, you can stream the event live on YouTube, or if you're in the city, come be part of the action. In person, Greta Bar, YVR 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. John Shannon knew John Garrett for 40 years plus. He'll be joining us next. Calls him a complete person, not a complex person. I thought that was a great line from Shannon about his dear friend John Garrett. We'll be joined by Cam Robinson from the World Under-18 Championships in Bratislava, Slovakia. He's got thoughts on the Canucks general manager search. We'll talk some prospects, and Marcus Naslund will talk some prospects with him as well. Ryan Lynn is looking terrific, the Richmond native and former Vancouver Giant at the U18s. Talk some Gavin McKenna there as well. Johnny King is an ace pitching prospect of the Toronto Blue Jays. He throws for the Vancouver Canadians, just 19 years old. He has already made it to high Class A. He's one of the best pitching prospects in all of baseball. Quite a personable young man as well, as we learned. Start a 6-game homestand tonight at the Nat. 75-cent hot dogs. You know who'd approve of 75-cent hot dogs?
Oh, you bet he would.
And a stadium replica giveaway tonight for those in attendance. They're here through Sunday, so please do check out the Vancouver Canadians and support one of our sports teams. And then later in the program, as mentioned, we'll talk about that Gary Mason story about baseball in Vancouver, as well as big changes in the Canadian Football League in terms of scheduling and playoff format. All of that is coming up on today's Sekeres and Price. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. We were both on Sidney Crosby yesterday. You got your 2-point night, 2 assists. I did not get my goal from Sidney, so you have the honor, sir. The tee is yours.
I forget, you told me I don't want to step on yours. I'm going. Is yours related to Ducks and Oilers?
No, mine's Dallas.
Okay. I'm going to pursue Schadenfreude. A Ducks victory.
Oh, wow.
I want to watch Rome burn.
I did have the guts for it.
Plus 135 for the Ducks to finish this things off in front of a stunned Edmontonian crowd.
Oh, my God. I didn't have the guts to pick it. In part because I just think Edmonton has been through these mini dramas.
They have. Yeah. They've generally dug themselves up, but it's 2 long playoff years already.
Yeah. I said at the beginning of the series, I just think Dallas is better than Minnesota. It's tied 2-2 going back to Big D here. I'm going to take the Stars with the empty netter just to get some value here. So -1.5, win by 2, paying at plus 195. Tired of waiting for the end of the game to get paid, ready to move on to the next puck drop? That's why Bet365, an official partner of the NHL, is 3-goal early payout. If the team you're riding goes up 3 goals at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out early. Hockey moves fast, and now with 3-goal early payout, there's one less thing you have to wait around for. Bet365. Download the app today and see what early payout's all about. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. John Shannon coming up next. So here's some price from the Historic Wall Center. We welcome in John Shannon, who had a 40-year association with John Garrett. He joins us from his home in Toronto. Condolences.
Well, You know what? I was actually thinking about it. It might be longer than that because I was a university student and got media passes to go watch the Toronto Toros play and watch John Garrett play for the Toronto Toros in the World Hockey Association at Maple Leaf Gardens. So that was 76, 77. But I got to know John in his playing time in Vancouver. And I wasn't at hockey night when he started working there. We had had long discussions the previous year about, yes, he was retiring. And yes, I thought he could be a good commentator, and was hopeful that he would consider working for Hockey Night at that point. So he was, the difficult part of all of this, and those of us that are getting older understand it. But this is a person that I don't think one observation other than I love the guy is pertinent. He might have been one of the most beloved people in the media world in this game and in the hockey world. There is not one person that had anything bad to say about John Garrett. His mood, his attitude, his love of the game, his love of people. He was part of our hockey culture in so many ways, and unfortunately, sometimes we take guys like John for granted, and only miss them when they're gone. And the only solace will be that Sharon and the family will understand now how much he meant to so many people.
Talk about, his mood, his way, sort of permeated everything that he did. And I would say that was his theme as a commentator as well, in that, he wasn't super X's and O's. He wasn't super analytical in terms of the numbers, but his mood and his storytelling carried the day. Talk about how different literally, he did a game, 4 or 5 days ago. So still a working guy at that point. I don't know if there's anybody like him, but certainly not at the national level, that's left in the booth.
So Blake, there's two things to your point, which are really valid. First of all, doing the Utah Vegas series, I thought, and I had a long talk with your friend Paul Graham about this after game 2. I thought John Garrett was outstanding in game 2. He had been around both clubs for 3 or 4 days. He had done what he always does, go to the morning skate. He's diligent in talking to people. People respect him, so he's very approachable. He's not afraid to approach people. And then you're right, he tells stories. The other aspect of it is, and this is specifically for Canuck fans, I know there have been dark days with this franchise in the last 25 years. I know it. But John Garrett never painted dark days. John Garrett became, I think, the standard bearer of what a regional commentator should be. Like, oh, my team's not very good, but I sure like listening to Shorty and Cheech. I sure enjoy how they do the game. And what John Garrett did was he would always believe in the cup half full mentality. And he could still be critical. He could still be fair. But in the end, he understood it in terms of what everyone was going through in their lives. It was still just a hockey game. He was brilliant at it. Whether it was the chuckle or the yes, or whatever thing he did, John Garrett made sure Canuck fans walked away from the game saying, wow, our team wasn't very good, but our broadcast sure was.
It was a worthwhile TV show. It was a worthwhile investment of my time in the TV show, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I feel so badly, obviously, for the family, but for Dan, who was in Salt Lake City, and for John, who wasn't. That would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, Shorthouse, you mean? Yeah. Give
Yeah.
us your understanding here, John. How did yesterday play out?
Well, as I understand it, and I don't want to make this sound like TMZ. He had elected not to go to the morning skate to do a local hit for Donnie Taylor's show.
Yeah.
And it was a no-show for the Donnie Taylor show. And then late in the afternoon, when they were supposed to leave for the rink, they couldn't get a hold of him, and they asked the hotel to do a wellness check, and the hotel found him, and soon after, the firemen and the ambulance were there, and they found out what we know now, and that he had passed away at some point, either overnight or in the morning.
Which is terrible for the two guys that are down there, obviously dealing with it, Murph included, and for the family, right? That's not how you draw it up in your brain as to how it'll happen when you lose your spouse or parent, right?
Well, but this goes, like, Gary Bettman did a statement this morning, as much as it shows respect for John, I think it really shows respect for the Garrett family to say that the game of hockey and the NHL respected, admired the sacrifices, and trust me, you guys have traveled. It's not all glamorous, but the sacrifices you make for families. And John Garrett loved what he did. And so the sacrifices weren't made by Garrett. The sacrifices are made by his family. To show that and I think in the next 2 or 3 days, I certainly hope that becomes part of the messaging is that we all loved John. But Sharon, what you gave up for John to follow what he dreamed of doing for the rest of his hockey career will certainly be appreciated.
Yeah, and we mentioned that in our opening block about Sharon and the family and sharing him with us, and how much richer we are because of John. He seemed like just a natural, gregarious personality that got through the glass, as they say in television, instantly. Was that the case in his early days of broadcasting? Was he just an absolute natural, throw on the tally right and let Cheech go? Or did you guys have to work with him? Tell us about his early days in broadcasting and the tradition and the transition he was making in professional life.
In fairness, he got hired originally at Hockey Night the year I got fired. Even though we had done the spade work to get him there. But then when I went back to be the executive producer in '94, John was a mainstay. And by then, John had found a niche. It was Bob and Harry were the A crew, but John was did yeoman service, would do anything he wanted. There was very little to criticize with John's work because he did it, to Blake's point, in such a way that you were sitting at the bar drinking a beer with John Garrett eating finger food, and that's an important aspect, eating finger food, and talking about the game of hockey, and his, and it goes, and every once in a while a couple of key stories would come out, and a few names would come out, and it would be whether it was Harry, when Harry was coaching the Canucks, or Roger Nielsen, who had a long time influence on John Garrett's life, whether it be in Peterborough or in the NHL, that you could see where the common sense style that John had. I mean, the great thing about John was there was no great big voice, no big booming voice. There was no fake voice.
No.
It was just John Garrett. And then he had a great the game, goaltender's eye. Goaltenders, they're either watching the game from the end of the bench or they're watching the game from the end of the rink. And so they have to understand everything all the time. Who can forget the stories of John Garrett in Quebec City with the Chin Show? the hot dogs in his pads, sitting at the end of the bench. And next thing you know, he's getting called to play the game, and he makes a save, and the hot dog goes one way and the mustard's on the jersey the other side. I mean, that was part of lore in John Garrett's world. Who can forget? And we've seen the video the last 24 hours. Who can forget, as a player, Mario Lemieux taking on 5'7" Gary Lupel, and the only Canuck to jump in and protect Gary Lupel was 5'8" John Garrett.
The towering John Garrett.
But that was he was such an unbelievable teammate. Even when we were all together, he would phone every once in a while and say, you know what, one of the guys is on the cruise pretty tired. You better keep an eye. He was always looking after other people on the show. He was one of those people that knew that he was, if ever, going to get the Stanley Cup final. Used to always joke that he was on the D team, but they did a hell of a lot of important hockey games. A hell of a lot of important hockey games for Hockey Night, and he just wanted to be treated as a professional, and you had to respect what he asked for. And he taught me as much about that as I hope I taught him at times.
It's funny. He passes at 74. His exuberance is that of a 7-year-old. And yet the life that he led, like he should be like 105. It was sort of a Renaissance life in a lot of ways, especially from the hockey perspective. Like it's like it's a documentary on the early days of hockey almost. His playing career, and then even just the way that he went about life. Like he is both 7 and 105 all at the same time.
Which made him a great grandfather.
Yeah.
Trust me, it made him a great grandfather. And he was so proud to be a grandfather. So we haven't worked together since I left Sportsnet, but that didn't mean we didn't talk. Mm-hmm. At the same time, every once in a while, I go down the YouTube hole and I will find a game that John played in, whether it be Gordie Howe's last game, where yes, John Garrett should have received an assist. And you wonder now if the NHL will fix that. Or a game in the WHA against the Houston Aeros. And I would send him the YouTube and he said, "Oh, that goalie was sure good." So we tried to maintain that type of relationship. He was, he was, so, I morphed into being a commentator 15 years ago. And then I was lucky enough with my Western roots, they asked me if I would go to Columbus or Pittsburgh or Buffalo or Ottawa or Montreal with the Canucks, the Flames, and the Oilers. And I loved that. But when I went with the Canuck team, it was always special. And John was always so inviting. You're here, you're part of the crew. Mm-hmm. You're one of us. And so that meant, whether that was the dinner or, in a U.S. city trying to find Shake Shack in time to go to Shake Shack for a burger. They worked great as a team. Murphy, Shorthouse, Greg Shannon, the producer, was part of that too for a while.
Yeah.
And they were always welcoming of me. And that's the part that it was almost full circle, that I was the newbie with those guys as opposed to the other way around.
That's funny. Yeah.
You mentioned the humor. You mentioned the self-deprecating humor, the mustard on the jersey, the hot dogs, the finger foods, and all of that. Mentioned it in the earlier block as well, but nobody played the punching bag or the doofus better than John Garrett. But do not mistake that for a lack of intellect. This was a brilliant man. John, he told a story in 2004 during the lockout. He went back to Queens to finish his English degree. Like, this was a learned, well-read guy who didn't always show that side of his personality, but could hang in a lot of conversations where you wouldn't necessarily think that's up John Garrett's alley if you only knew Cheech.
Again, the repartee was sitting with him and having a discussion beyond the hockey world. There was tons of opinions that were there. and tons of logical explanation of why he believed in what he believed in. And let's also remember that his humbleness and his confidence in himself was not arrogance. I mean, in one previous lockout, if memory serves me, he was a UPS driver, driving a truck, delivering stuff while the NHL was trying to figure out how millionaires could make more money. And John would get identified. Hey, you're John Garrett. I know, I'm a UPS driver. You know, so that's part and parcel. And to your point, was he was a complete person, but not a complex person. And that's what I think that's what made him so special and so approachable around the NHL. Everybody knew John Garrett. Everybody loved John Garrett. You know.
You've covered most of it here, John, but is there anything else you would want our audience to know about John Garrett, the man that you knew so well for so long?
Well, just as I said on social media, you know, he loved the Canucks. He loved it. He loved being around the club. You know, the stories of his time as a player, then as a broadcaster. He loved the Blue Jays. He never stopped talking about baseball. If there was a chance to do a promo, John would have that extra little bit of oomph about who was going to be the starting pitcher and whether the Jays were going to make it or not. You know, the unfortunate part is that sometimes we take friendships for granted, and people who got to know him, I think, really got to love him for what he was, and then when he's gone, you're going to miss him that much more. This is not to lump them together, but this is a year now we've lost Greg Millen and John Garrett at the same time of year, and Jim Robson and Bob Cole. And Bob Cole 2 years ago. So it's such is the cycle of life, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be missed.
John, thanks for sharing the memories. Condolences again.
Cheers, boys.
So here's some price from the historic Wall Center.
This segment brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing. Told you about a new beer dropping today, that Brock Besser collab, the Pilsner. I have more light-ish beer news.
Oh.
Thursday, April the 30th, just a couple days from now. Neighborhood Brewing has got a new brew. The Capo Italian Lager.
Ooh.
Capo Italian Lager keeps it cool and collected. It's crisp, clean, quietly confident with fresh floral and herbal notes. And just the right amount of swagger to it. Easy drinking, but far from basic. It's in the kind of lager that shows up sharp and leaves lasting an impression. The Capo Italian Lager. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, both yesterday's beer and today's beer would be happily drunk by John Cheech Garrett.
Oh, yeah.
He loved him some Pilsners and lagers.
Yeah. We're joined now by Cam Robinson, the director of everything at Elite Prospects, who comes to us from a Bratislava hotel room where he's covering the under-18 championships. We're going to get to that.
They know Pilsners and lagers there, too.
They sure do. They sure do. My people are Pilsner people in Slovakia. And Cam, we're going to get into your memories of Cheech here in a moment, as well as the tournament and the draft and all the things we typically talk to you about. But first, you've been doing some digging, doing some talking on the Canucks GM file. What can you tell us?
I wouldn't say I've been doing some digging, but I've had thoughts. I've had thoughts that I've wanted to get off my chest, and I figure this is the perfect forum for such thoughts, right? And this will be the last time I bring it up too. How about that? I'm gonna put it out there right now, and then it'll be the last time I bring this one up. Is that I don't care what anyone else says. That probably the best leader in franchise history is absolutely ready to run a Canadian team again right now. And I think that despite how they're portrayed by people like us in the media, that I think the Aquilini family is more than just Francesco, and I think it's more complex than that. And I think that with the benefit of time is also that group is surely appreciative of those who did good work for them and put their interests first. And to me, it makes no sense to not at least consider that it should be Mike Gillis for real this time. I don't care how many lists you make. He should be the best candidate on any of them. And so that's all I'm going to say about that, is that I think if they're not strongly considering Mike Gillis, that I think that that's a mistake. Just wanted to get that out there.
I hear you. I do believe there is a complication with the member of the Aquilini family that you name checked there. And for all we know, that the hay may be in the barn in Toronto, or are you hearing any? I mean, it seems like the conversation in the public sphere has been more about John Chayka, the former Coyotes general manager, of late than it is about Gillis. But who knows where this is going, because this is a very big hire. And of course, there are a lot of people involved in that hire as well. I mean, it's not just Keith Pelly. It goes all the way up the Rogers chain, Tony Staffieri, and some of the executives as well. If it's not Gillis, if it can't be Gillis, what are your thoughts on Gilman?
Again, I think Lawrence Gilman is a great candidate. I think he's a bright guy. I spent a little bit of time with him. I think you and the three of us spent a little bit of time with him in Dallas there one night 100 years ago, once upon a time in Texas. I think that he would be a great name to come back as well. I know that Cam Lawrence's name has been batted around as well, who I think would be a tremendous option in that world as well too. He's super data centric. He's a CFO of one of the city's largest companies. He's in other sports like baseball. I think that a profile like his, he would already be a GM. Hockey's a little slower to elevate that type of executive. I don't think he's currently viewed as like a top GM candidate right now. But I do believe that he's well known, and I think he's well respected within the Canucks organization. It wouldn't be shocking to me to see him brought into the front office in some role soon, ahead of a guy like Lawrence Gilman, who maybe is that recycle hire, who isn't an up and comer at that regard. But I do think that Cam Lawrence would be a really interesting hire. I just don't think he's like a serious candidate for GM right now, nor do I think Lawrence Gilman is.
Yeah, Cam Lawrence, if you're not familiar, Vancouver guy. He has been a consultant with the Florida Panthers. He was there for a number of years, in fact, 6, if I'm reading his Elite Prospects page correctly, as well as with the Columbus Blue Jackets. I did check in with someone who was close to Cam yesterday and said, to their knowledge, he had not been interviewed and didn't know if there was any plan.
That's a very confusing conversation, because it was a guy named Cam talking about a guy named Lawrence and a guy named Cam Lawrence.
Fair enough.
So
hey?
Get your Cam straight, get your Lawrence.
My head is spun just a little bit right now. Are you hearing anything else? Any other timeline scoops or scuttlebutt that around the Canucks GM hire right now?
To be honest with you, no. Over here in Slovakia, some of the buzz, and you brought it up there already, Matt, is a lot of the talk around here. Every scout in the world basically is right here, and loads of executives is talking about Toronto much more than Vancouver right now. And John Chayka and Matt Sundin's name just keeps firing on repeat, which is what kind of led me to that Mike Gillis rant there, is that if he is not the guy in Toronto, he should be the guy somewhere. Let's just get that out there, is that teams should be putting him at the top of their list in that.
Million percent. Ryan Martin's name has entered the chat here in Vancouver. New York Rangers executive, and before that, a longtime Detroit Red Wings executive. He's also involved in other searches, if I'm not familiar. Do you know Ryan at all? Do you know anything on the background there? Yeah.
I don't have much on him. Yeah.
What about Bill Scott, who is also his name has appeared here in the Vancouver search?
Again, is from my understanding is that they are casting a wide net and looking at people like that. But I think that as they whittle down and they start to do their in-person interviews, that we're going to see that it's going to be more familiar names, more guys that have been in that role previously or have been to the finish line previously and maybe not quite pushed over the top. I do think it's going to get whittled down to some more common names for the fans.
Let me give you a familiar name, because Dhaliwal was musing yesterday that the owner quite likes Marcus Naslund. And we know Marcus has an illustrious history here as a player with the Canucks, and also Moved into a managerial role post-playing career in Sweden with the, of course, famous Moto Club, of which he and the Sedins and others hold near and dear. What do you make of Marcus Naslund and some sort of return in the front office, in a front office capacity for a legendary Vancouver Canuck?
Yeah, in some capacity, I think is the right wording there. I did see that as well, and I poked around with a couple of Swedish people I know to see, and it was kind of expressed to me that it would be very, very surprising if he was coming in like a top managerial role versus coming in as a senior VP or a special advisor, or taking a similar role that we've seen some guys like a Jason Spezza, like a Rick Nash, some of these former players that come in and you get your hands dirty a little bit. You start to work in the scouting department. You start to work in player development. You start to do all sorts of things, sitting in on these extension meetings and these trade meetings, and you start to build kind of that base for that executive status. Where the next thing is now you're an AGM, and now maybe you start to be looked at as someone who can really run a team. But I agree is that he's very beloved in that organization from top to bottom, from ownership down to and all the way to the fans. So I think it would be a good hire. I think it would make a lot of sense, but at the same time, I think let's see who the big dogs, who these shot callers are going to be, and see if there's going to be a relationship there to bring him in as well.
Let's move to the prospects, the future Vancouver Canucks. Who's stealing the show there? Anybody authoring a late drive up the draft rankings here with a performance?
Vancouver boy, if I'm not mistaken. I saw Cam tweeting about Ryan Lynn, now ex-Giants defenseman, sadly, because it's on his way to the University of
And we know a fair
Denver.
amount about Mathis Preston as well, who's also stealing some headlines.
Let's say this too, is I was pretty happy to see that the Vancouver Giants were retweeting some of my stuff about Ryan Lynn there and still supporting this young player. I love to see it, because we kind of seen last year when some of those kids were leaving the West, some of the teams were like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So I really like to see that. Yeah, Lynn had a tremendous game against Finland there last night. Best player on the ice by a country mile. I don't know if you guys saw that game, but the physicality, this kid does not play super physical. Like, he defends with his intelligence, his gap, his skating, his stick. And he was immediately stepping into bodies, separating. And then he threw this open ice hit in the neutral zone where he loves to kind of start to surf back. And he recognized that this kid had his head down and his eyes behind him. And he just surfed right in. And you could hear the air leaving this kid's lungs, from where I was sitting in press row. And I asked him about it after the game, and he just had a big old smile on his face. And he's like, I don't get to do that too often, but he's showing the scouts some things too. And, every week we talk about a player that could be there for Vancouver's second first. And up until, a few weeks ago, I could have probably made the argument, I probably should have profiled him then for this, is that, he could slip into those early 20s. I think the performance that he's been authoring at this tournament, he's been Canada's best defenseman ahead of Keaton Verhoff. Talking to some teams, I've said it to a number of teams here in scouts, and I just said, I think he's going to be better than a few of these defensemen, these bigger defensemen that are taken ahead of him. And most of them agree with me too, is that he's very well respected at this event. And he's certainly doing great wonders for his stock. And there's a couple more, if we got time too, that I can talk about too.
Does he look small, as small as Quinn out there, or does he look bigger than Quinn?
He looks bigger than Quinn. He's like 5'11" and a half or something like that too. Right. And so it's I talked to him when I spent the day with him back in the fall. He's just if the difference between a half inch to get me to 6 foot is what's going to hold the team back, then oh well for them, because I'm gonna play harder than some of these guys that are 6'2", 6'3". He doesn't look small on the ice, but like I said, he's learned to defend really, really effectively in a translatable way. So some of these kids that are, like a Carson Karls, who's 6'1", plays a really physical brand of hockey in his defense. And he's not going to have that leverage at the NHL. He won't be above average. He'll be slightly below average size for an NHL defenseman. Whereas, Ryan has learned how to defend within the constraints of his physical profile. And I think that's going to translate really, really well for him.
A right shot defenseman from Richmond, sign me up. Especially if he's available for the Canucks with that second first round pick, or maybe even if they have to move up a few spots to go get him. Let's not discount that. They've got draft capital, right? So if you see your guy sitting there at 20, 21 and you're on pick 25 or whatever, and it's going to cost you a third or a fourth or whatever it's going to cost you to move up those few spots, then I think that's worthwhile. I know you have some other guys lined up, but forgive me because since you're in Slovakia, and I know he's not playing the under-18s because he's too old, but he's a pure center. There's probably not a lot of pure centers that are going to be available at 25 or even at 30. Well, if it's 25 or even at 33, the second round pick, the first pick in the second round. That Tomáš Šrenko kid really impressed me at the World Juniors for Slovakia. A word or two about the countryman there in Bratislava.
Kid's a shooter. He's playing for Nitra right now, which is, an hour and a half down the road. And so we were going to go, a couple of us, we were going to go catch one of his games because they're in the playoffs right now. And then I had all these other responsibilities and it wasn't going to time out well. And it worked out because he got healthy scratch. He was dressed, but he sat on the bench the whole time. So I'm glad I didn't. A bunch of NHLers scouts went down there to watch him. And so they had to go back the next night to see him play 9 minutes. But he's a shooter. He is absolutely a shooter. He's a finisher. There are holes in his game. I think that taking him early second would be rich. Take him early third. Maybe late second, and swing on the upside on a kid like that for sure. A Slovak. There's another Slovak here, Adam Goyer, who's a big defenseman, big shot. He had a couple of goals last night and a big win against Latvia to secure first place in that pool, the same side Canada's on. So the Slovaks are doing well. Again, I think it's some people like him, late first. I'm more of kind of like early second, but he's an interesting prospect for sure.
Mathis Preston in the same spot, given his tournament so far?
Mathis has been playing well. I thought he had another good game yesterday. He's still a perimeter player. I think that he had a little bit of battle in his game last night. He has excellent offensive skills. Once you start to get into that kind of mid-20s, he has separating skill compared to basically the rest of that cohort. He's a player that there's a reason that we had him ranked close to the top 10 before the season started. And that has kind of faded away. And that's faded away because he's just kind of, he defers to perimeter, soft, lazy plays and relying on his hands too much. But there is great skill there. So I think that he's absolutely a first rounder. Could he be an option for Vancouver first round pick? Absolutely. Could he be an option with that potential first pick in the second round? Absolutely, for sure.
He has unbelievable range. Smott's got him as high as number 9, Dauber at number 10, and then Buttons at 57.
Yeah, people who love him a lot because they think the offensive skill will translate. And there are others, and Cam, I believe you gave us this opinion earlier in the year because we looked at him and went, hey, Penticton kid, we always keep an eye on the British
Peters at number 7, actually. 7 to 57.
That was preseason, though. Peters had that preseason, we'll say. Yeah.
You were the first to tell us you weren't sure the skill was going to translate because it is so perimeter-based in the junior ranks, Cam.
Yeah, and he had a difficult year. I thought he finished all right with Vancouver when he came back from the injury, and they slapped an A on his jersey too at the end, which I thought was interesting too for a kid who just showed up. Talking to Lynn there yesterday too, he was heaping some praise on him. Those two have known each other for 100 years and played Youth Olympics and Holinka and U17 and all that, so he knows them well too. So a lot of the players I talk to and some of the coaches they do like him like as a person, and I think that he puts in the work off ice and in practice. It's just when it comes to the game, you just want to see a little more, especially at his size, is that he's going to have to get to the interior. He's going to have to get off the wall. He's going to have to get underneath and time his landing spots like some of these smaller guys that actually do succeed, like a Viggo Bjork, who that's all he does is live on the interior and get to the inside and work off the wall.
And he's going back to the Giants, Cam. There's no NCAA commitment there, if I'm not mistaken. Or you tell me, is there for Preston?
For Preston.
He has not committed. He has not left Vancouver. I do think that there's still a very reasonable chance that he does go to school. I know that there are certain schools who've been talking to him and approaching him, and we'll see what he decides.
Yeah, needless to say, he'd be very attractive to NCAA programs. Gavin McKenna is headed to the Senior Worlds. What's at stake? How do you expect he will look against the big boys, men, professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I put this out there weeks ago. I was told that there was a decent chance that he was going to be there, just like I think there's a decent chance we're going to see Ivar Sandberg and hopefully Viggo Bjork there as well, too, and Albert Smits. And there's going to be a whole host of draft-eligible talent that we'll get to see at that event, which is great. I think it'll be another challenge for him. I think that the move from WHL to the NCAA, we saw, a bit of a transitional phase there where he was still producing some points but not dominating. this is going to be a difficult tournament. And we've talked about it, is that as these players want to have a legitimate crack at being on these best on best teams, that more and more are going to say yes to this opportunity to go to the World Championships and play for their country. And so that's going to only raise the level of competition. So I think this is going to be a nice barometer for him. Hopefully he gets some serious minutes. You know, we saw Porter Martone go last year and kind of in and out of the lineup and not getting a ton of minutes. It was a good experience for him, but I'm not sure it's really elevated his draft stock. And I'm not sure Gavin can really elevate his too much more at this point. But I'm sure teams are going to be looking for how he can handle the physical presence of some of these mature men playing hockey. Can he, the exact same thing we're talking about with Mathis Preston, can he get to the inside? You know, can he use his skill and his intelligence to land in those spots he needs to find pockets?
The 3 young Canucks that are heading over for Sweden, it'd be nice to see them get some minutes and work on their games in a higher skill atmosphere as well, huh?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure, and like maybe end the season on a nice positive note. Hey, have win some games, maybe put up a couple points, maybe come home with a medal. That would be excellent heading into off-season training and kind of getting loose and ready to go for next season, and hopefully, get cooking early.
Yeah. Lastly, here, Cam, you mentioned to us before we started recording here that you had met John Garrett a couple of times, but needless to say, your experience with John was as a kid on Vancouver Island, growing up watching the Canucks. A word or two about Cheech.
Yeah, sad day. Like you said, I'd only crossed paths with him a couple times, and he was just a beacon of light and positivity, and he took the time to chat with me, and always had a joke and humor added into it, and that was the guy I grew up listening to and watching on TV, right? He was a tremendous broadcaster, and I think the reason that is because he was so true and honest with who he was, right? Like, he was a fun guy, he was a bright guy, and he melded that perfectly in broadcasting, and that's why he's so beloved, and that's why we're seeing just such an outpouring of sadness and great memories from everyone who knew him for all these years that he worked in the business and played in the game, and just a terrific man and a legend in every sense of the word. And I my condolences to his family for sure, and his closest friends, and I hope he rests well.
Yeah. Well said, Cam. Thank you for this. Enjoy your time there in Bratislava at the U18s. We'll catch up next week, my man.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, and this next segment is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. We've talked about it, a 2-week homestand, a rare 2-week homestand here at the Nat. They're back at it tonight on 75-cent hot dog nights at the stadium every Tuesday all season long. There's a stadium replica giveaway tonight as the Seas kick off a 6-game set against Hillsborough here all week through Sunday. And we're joined now by Canadian starting pitcher Johnny King. Johnny, how you doing?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing awesome. Can't complain, man. I'm in the beautiful city of Vancouver. It's absolutely awesome here. So thank you guys for having me on the show.
Now, before we get started, he mentioned 75-cent hot dog night. If you were a character in a motion picture about minor league baseball, you'd be the guy that stuffs 75-cent hot dogs into his jersey, right, when you know you're not pitching. Not only if you think you're pitching that night, you're not going to do it. Would you consider sneaking some hot dogs into the jersey if you think you're not an option for the bullpen? Absolutely. I mean, 75-cent hot dogs. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. I mean, baseball and hot dogs, just the best combination in the world.
And Johnny, that's Canadian, like 50-cent U.S. hot dogs.
Exactly.
Give him a greenback. You should get 2 hot dogs out of that at the concession stand.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
It's a good plan. Yeah. It's a good plan. How's Vancouver treating you so far, man?
I mean, it's been awesome. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I mean, it's great. I mean, I've only been here for maybe 3 weeks now in total because we went on the road, whatever. But I mean, I got to really experience it like yesterday on the off day, and then I went to go golf a little bit. The golf's unreal. It's like New York on steroids, honestly. I mean, it's freaking awesome.
So you're a golfer, are you?
Yes. Yep.
Get used to those uneven mountain lies, okay? It's not flat like Florida. We've all played in Florida. You never get an uneven lie in Florida, but here you'll be hitting from side hill, downhill, uphill the entire way around.
To talk
Absolutely.
about how you got.
Yeah, that's definitely.
You were born in Michigan. Tell us the journey. Did you grow up entirely in Florida? No, you graduated high school there, but tell us the journey.
Yeah, so born in Michigan, born in Commerce. I moved out of there when I was about 2, but we still have a house up there, have some family or whatever. But basically grew up in Naples my whole life. Went to school there, and then now in the beautiful city of Vancouver.
How did you get into baseball?
Really, my grandpa started throwing me like these really small wiffle balls, and I had like a really skinny bat, and I played other sports growing up, but like the left arm was just never. My dad was like, "You got to drop all the sports you got. Like this left arm is special, man." So,
yeah, if your kid throws with his left hand, folks,
we've had the conversation before.
Get thee to a baseball academy.
So you're pitching there in Naples, Florida, in the high school ranks, and very good high school baseball in Florida. And now around comes the draft. What were your expectations heading into the draft last year, a couple years ago?
I had a pretty good idea that I wasn't going to be going to school. I wasn't a big school guy. I was definitely really pushing to get drafted. I saw the scouts that were at the games. I kind of had a good idea. I knew I was either a first day or second day kind of guy, and obviously my dreams came true. I mean, it was the best thing that could have happened. I mean, especially with the Blue Jays being close to home, the facilities are unbelievable. I mean, the experience that I've gone through with the Blue Jays is awesome, and I can't complain. Very blessed.
Well, you debuted last year, pitched in the Complex League, and then in Dunedin, and all of a sudden it's the smashing professional debut, Johnny, and your name starts hitting all these prospect lists. How did you deal with all of that fame in the baseball world, where people now were putting expectations on you?
Yeah, I mean it's all good to hear. You know, you like to get the different sides of different opinions from different articles or whatever, but it's kind of just like keep my mind on like the baseball thing, like just keep doing what I'm doing, just kind of put that behind me, and just like God has a plan for me and he's going to take me there. So just block out all the noise and just keep going.
It's been a terrific start with the C so far, a 0.87 ERA through 4 innings, through 4 starts and 10 innings pitched. Tell us about the early going here and how you found high A baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I'm throwing it pretty decent right now. I got to keep getting better on a couple things, kind of working on a little bit of control issues right now. Trying to lessen the walk rate. But, I mean, other than that, it's awesome playing up here. The weather is awesome. I mean, I pitched at nooner at the Nat, 12 o'clock, 60 degrees and sunny. It doesn't get much better, you know?
The Florida guy is saying the weather is awesome up here, Johnny.
Yeah, you're about to get a dose. Yes. You're about to get a dose, but that it has been a great spring for playing baseball and making sure you guys don't get the rainouts. You've got time on your side. How do you balance? Hey, I've got time. I know the road is long ahead of me. With I want to be better tomorrow. I'm sure even a 19-year-old kid has got some impatience in the process. How do you preach the patience to yourself?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. It's kind of just like I said earlier. It's just doing what I do. I mean, just learning new things every year. I mean, I learned a lot last year that made me a better pitcher this year, and I'm just going to keep learning from these older guys. And I mean that's just kind of how you have to take it.
Do you have a lot of routine, a lot of process that you repeat? Not necessarily superstition, although maybe that too.
Yeah, I definitely have I mean, as a starter, you got to have a big routine. You got to have the certain things that you do. So it's like, yeah, I mean, every 6th day I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. So.
You seem like a personable and affable fellow, Johnny. Are you one of these don't talk to me on the day that I start guys? A little Doc Halladay going on there? Or do you interact with your teammates on days that you start?
It depends how long before the game, honestly. Okay. It depends if it's 3 hours before the game, I'm available. I'll have lunch with you. I'll have breakfast. I'll do whatever. But once we get to that hour 30, it's go time.
It's lock in. Gotcha. Have you heard about what it's like here in the summer and pitching before the full houses at Nat Bailey Stadium, because one of the things that our old friend Alex Anthopoulos, the ex-Blue Jays general manager, used to always say to us was, we want our best prospects to go through Vancouver because we know there's going to be a full house of 5,000-6,000 people in the stands, and they've got to learn how to perform in front of an expectant audience. Have you heard of the legend of Vancouver and all the fans that turn out, especially as the weather gets nice, and how their eyes are actually on the game, Johnny? This isn't pitching before 250 people at a complex. You got an expectant audience watching your every pitch.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I definitely watched some games last year when I was in Dunedin. I had some buddies up in Vancouver and would keep up with them in the summer. And I mean, it sounds loud on camera, and I can't imagine what it's going to be like in person. So it honestly, I can't imagine, like, it's going to be crazy when it's packed out in the summer when it's all nice. And I'm surprised it's not packed now just because of the Canucks being done. That's what I heard was the kind of deal breaker with the Canucks and how everyone would be coming to the Vancouver games. But I've pitched here, I think, in front of, it's the warmth. I understand that.
Yeah.
But pitched in front of maybe 3,500. That was a very good experience. Definitely needed this in my career, and definitely needed to do this before I can go anywhere else.
Trey Savage is the poster boy, but we got to know Cal Steven last year before he got traded. We got to know Gage Stanifer. Blue Jays seem to have the magic touch right now with arms, Johnny, and pitching development. Talk to me about what it's like being a pitcher in the Blue Jays developmental system.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely taken a big step forward. I mean, you see all these guys moving up the prospect list, and you see, I mean, it's really cool to see at the complex. I mean, you look on field 1, there's a good arm throwing. Field 2, there's another good arm throwing. I mean, it's just stacked with talent, and all Blue Jays fans should be excited to see what's going to happen in the future.
On your pitches, what's it, you said you still want to always improve. What's if you could unlock something today in your pitching, what would it be?
Probably my changeup. Probably the changeup.
Just consistency on it, or
consistency on the changeup, and then develop a fourth pitch.
What is the arsenal, Johnny? What do you throw?
Throw a fastball, curveball, changeup, and then soon to be probably a slider.
Yeah,
nice.
What's the fastball get up to, or are you more? It's about movement as opposed to pure velocity.
Got up to 98 in spring training. Been in these Vancouver games, I think I've been 93, 96. Just kind of cruising, so.
Cruising at 96, 98, 19 years old. How about that? And when's the schedule start this week? Thursday. All right, everybody. So you're going to want to go out to the Nat and see him on Thursday. But remember, 90 minutes before first pitch, we don't talk to him. We're not talking to Johnny anymore. That said, it was delightful talking to you today, young man. Thank you for the time. We wish you all the best here this week and beyond. And we'll catch up with you down the road, Johnny.
Enjoy the hot dogs.
Thank you, guys. Nice meeting you guys. Have a good one.
That is Johnny King of the Vancouver Canadians. They're here all week. You can get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center and the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio, built by Arborlee. Game night turns into a game weekend at the Wall Center. From puck drop to last call, everything you need right outside your door. Stay where the fans stay. wallcenter.com. Well, last night in the NHL playoffs, the Pittsburgh Penguins once again stave off elimination at the hands of their cross-state rival Philadelphia Flyers. They force a Game 6 in Philadelphia. And as our friend Colin Miller says, it's beginning to become squeaky bum time for the Flyers and their fans. Not only have they missed 2 opportunities to polish off Sydney and the Penguins, and you don't want to give Sydney too many cracks, but there's a developing situation today with Matvei Michkov.
He missed the flight, was late to it, was prevented from boarding the flight because he was late enough.
Ooh.
Forced to fly back to Philadelphia on economy.
Yeah.
Commercially.
Well, and it has been a strained relationship, I think it's fair to say, between Rick Tocchet, his head coach, of course, the former head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, and this Russian rookie, a first-round pick, teaming with potential. Tocchet was not shy about sharing the fact that Michkov was not in particularly great shape when he showed up to the Flyers. And it seems like professionalism is a matter here with Michkov, and professionalism is not something that Rick Tocchet is going to let slide.
No. It sounds like he didn't even want to take warm-up last night. He knew what his fate was going to be in terms of playing fourth-line minutes as well. Like, there's if you can stuff the genie back into this bottle, I'll be impressed.
Yeah.
I don't know that this relationship is savable.
First of a 5-year deal for Rick Tocchet, who did terrific work getting the Flyers to the playoffs this year. It may come down to a very difficult decision for Daniel Briere and Keith Jones, Flyers management, about whether their head coach and this mercurial but most talented winger can coexist. I mean, I would have to think that there will be phone calls broken off to the Flyers, Briere and Jones, to see about Michkov's availability in trade this
He's not even 21 and a half. He's already got a 63-point season and a 51-point season, 2 20-goal seasons under his belt.
Yeah, not a rookie. I should forgive myself. Correct myself.
Finished his sophomore season.
Sophomore. Mm-hmm. And John Tortorella, another former Vancouver head coach, and the Vegas Golden Knights score a overtime victory over the Utah Mammoth last night. And
that was a wild match.
Yeah. This has been a fun series. There's goals. I mean, Utah skates very well. It looks like Vegas is a step behind the play, but they're doing enough there to forge, well, going at least 6 in this series with it all tied up at 2.
I mean, you erase a 3-0 lead and 3-0 deficit and take a lead in the third. I wonder how often a team loses that game in the end. Like the momentum was so in the Mammoth favor. I mean, I was already envisioning the John Tortorella goodbye press conference.
Right.
Like I can't believe they won that game, but it's overtime and they had to win it twice because they had a winner originally, wiped out. And on an offside call, that was a correct call. And it was enough offside that I agreed with it.
Well, they also killed off a penalty in the early stages of overtime, and you felt the momentum swing back to the Mammoth in that regard. Anyways, that looks like it's going to be a fun conclusion. We'll keep an eye on that one as well. And the winner of that could be playing the Anaheim Ducks, who can beat Edmonton as soon as this evening in Game 5. And no Connor McDavid at morning skate. Is there anything suspicious there, or he's just playing banged up and skipped the morning skate?
I haven't seen a follow-up, but he was not at morning skate. I would suspect they're just trying to, they're calling him a game-time decision.
Yep.
So
Sabres can move on tonight, Game 5 at home against Boston, and then we're Wild and Stars in Game 5 with that series tied 2-2. Puck drop from Dallas. The Nation Network is your ultimate playoff headquarters, from expert shows, deep dives, live socials, analytics, fantasy insights, whether it's epic goals, big hits, game-changing plays. The Nation Network has you covered. One network every moment. Tune in daily to the DFO Rundown or The Sheet with Jeff Merrick. And, of course, we'll be talking some playoffs as well here on Segaris and Price. Big story from Gary Mason in the Globe and Mail today. The group behind Vancouver's MLB bid is credible and connected enough to give Canada a second pro franchise. Gary writes, quote, "The person leading the project is Zach Ross, president of the Cape Group, a Vancouver-based residential and commercial real estate company, according to 3 sources. Gary says that there are members of the 49ers ownership group and the Seattle Kraken owners that have also expressed interest in joining with Zach Ross.
The Kraken have since backed away from it.
Gary tweeted this morning, I've heard from a representative of the Kraken who said ownership is not interested in being part of any prospective ownership group for Major League Baseball in Vancouver. Now, that's on behalf of the club. Of course, there's a number of individual owners with the Kraken who may
could
see
peel
fit
off,
on their own accord. Needless to say, 49ers ownership is well-heeled, because how can you not be when you own an NFL franchise worth multi-billions of dollars? Now, that is the York family that owns the San Francisco 49ers. They might better be known as the DeBartolo family based on the heyday of the 49ers and all those Super Bowl championships. Of course, the owner at the time was Eddie DeBartolo, known as one of the great owners in sports franchise history. His sister's kid, his nephew, Jed York, now runs the 49ers ownership group. DeBartolo was banned, thrown out of the club after some shady dealings with a gambling operation way back in the day. But here's the thing, Blake. We talked about whomever this group is has to have just major gravitas and money because of the cost of starting
money.
This up. I mean, you're looking at a $4 billion franchise fee as well as whatever your other costs are going to be to build the stadium and, of course, set up a baseball infrastructure, which is quite complicated beyond just what it is in other sports. We're setting up a spring training facility and complexes in Venezuela, the Dominican, blah, blah, blah. I had not heard of Zach Ross, and based on the way that Gary Mason writes about him, it seems like he doesn't have the money and is going to require partners. Now, you love the idea of an NFL ownership group being behind this because, of course, they've operated a sports franchise before and have all sorts of money, or at least the ability to borrow all sorts of money, because even billionaires, liquidity is not necessarily at hand to finance all of this. That the Kraken say they're not involved. Again, that could be semantics. There could be someone within the Kraken ownership group. But Gary also reports, Mason, says one of the sources said the site that the bid group has zeroed in on is an almost 9 hectare or 20-acre plot of city-owned land on the south shore of False Creek, just east of the Cambie Bridge. Now, this is the rendering that the Daily Hive had last week in their expansive article, Kenneth Chan's article, on where stadium sites could be for a baseball team in Vancouver. I'm glad. So that's Olympic Village there on the left side of the screen. I got to say, that's an inspired idea because that plot of land and
can't even picture where they're talking. We're talking
because there's nothing on it, Blake, or it's used as like storage. It is for me one of two sites that are blights on the city. You cross bridges in this town, you see all of this beauty, but if you're crossing Cambie Bridge northbound and you turn to your right, you see this plot of land that just doesn't seem to be maximized. That plot in the old Molson factory brewery at the foot of Burrard Bridge, to me, are the two scars on the face of Vancouver in terms of plots of land that just look ugly and don't seem to have a purpose or could be put to better use. And we know how sparse.
We're talking immediately beside the bridge?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I've seen it. They have done temporary Cirque du Soleil shows there.
Right,
and
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Uh-huh. It doesn't seem like it's big enough, but okay.
Well, and the other thing is, if Ross heads up a Vancouver-based residential and commercial real estate company, boy, Zach Ross, the Hastings site has been made available for commercial and residential real estate. It's just you got to get involved in the soccer game of the Whitecaps and building a stadium there. Maybe he's just not a soccer fan. Anyways, Ross did not comment with Mason. Attempts were unsuccessful. Also should be noted, Tom Bogert, the MLS insider who broke the story about the Whitecaps yesterday, says that Mayor Ken Sim and all this talk about baseball in Vancouver is not going over well with MLS Commissioner Don Garber and MLS executives. And look, we talked about it last week. It seems a little disjointed that the mayor is putting his face and his organizational efforts behind a Major League Baseball franchise that seems a little pie in the sky when you have an urgent matter of the Whitecaps here at hand. Could also be political on the part of Sim, that he knows it's absolutely gone, the Whitecaps, and there's no saving them. And so, if I'm going to be a sports mayor or I'm going to appeal to sports fans before the election this fall, that I got to get another sports ball in the air, something dare to dream, something to, as he's talked about, affect the legacy of the city of Vancouver. Do you think the timing is coincidental, or do you think MLS owners seized on all this baseball talk to say, look at Vancouver, they're not even dealing with the urgent matter at hand, and they're dreaming on a baseball team?
It's complicated because, you know what, the city itself does not have much left to do with the Whitecap situation. Like, or in the immediate, at least.
Yeah.
It's more in the provincial hands right now.
They're a city and provincial jurisdiction of Hastings Park. It is quite a convoluted,
But the city's already done its job there. The MOU is already in effect.
That's right.
They've already done, so in the immediate, like, there's no new asks of the city.
Right.
The city's done, I mean, outside of the city saying, we're going to build you a stadium, which is not going to happen.
Not happening.
So, like, I don't know what else the city's supposed to do with the Whitecaps right now.
And
the province has a card to play with BC Place,
and it wouldn't be the first time that MLS is a little confused about the different levels of government here and the jurisdictions. You may remember Don Garber talking about the premier of British Columbia.
Pronunciation,
Premier. Yeah. Trey Savage scheduled as the starting pitcher for the Blue Jays today, who continued their series with the Boston Red Sox. It would be his season debut after arm discomfort cropped up this spring and delayed his spring training and build-up, warm-up routine to the season. We also talked about how last year Trey Savage played the longest season imaginable, starting all the way deep into the World Series, after having the shortest season imaginable the year previous, after being drafted in July out of East Carolina and not pitching professionally. So
0 to 1,000.
It was a very big ask of a very young arm, and of course a huge part of the Blue Jays' future. So they wanted to be judicious with him. The plan was to move Eric Lauer to the bullpen, but now Max Scherzer has been put on the IL, and he hasn't looked great this year either. So forever in flux, that Blue Jays rotation. Got to get some winning going. Meanwhile, down the I-5, the Seattle Mariners are really rolling right now. Cal Raleigh, who got off to a very slow start this season, for me, he was the MVP last year, has homered in 5 of the last 7 games. Now, the M's did drop an 11-4 decision to the Minnesota Twins last night, but they had previously won 4 in a row. Good to see Cal's big bat get going. And the Philadelphia Phillies have fired their Canadian manager, Rob Thompson. Now, Rob had done very good work. I know he had a lot of fans here in the BC baseball community, across the Canadian baseball community, for putting in his dues and rising up to the level of field manager for an iconic franchise. Alas, the Phillies are 9-19. They are already 10.5 games behind Atlanta in the NL East. The Phillies and Mets, Blake, 9-19 with those payrolls. My goodness. Each and every year, it seems the Phillies and Mets, particularly the Mets, are spending like drunken sailors in free agency, and they can't seem to fashion halfway decent ball clubs. In fact, the other thing is both teams are 5-10 at home and 4-9 away. I mean, absolutely identical marks there for two would-be giants of the NL East, who are now tied for the basement. New CFL scheduling coming in 2027. The season will begin on May long weekend, and there's a new playoff format to boot. Let's start with the season start. From the Department of Redundancy Department. This is something that began under former Commissioner Randy Ambrosi, the notion of moving the Canadian Football League season up. They wanted to avoid some of those cold weather games in November. Now, I'm old enough to remember CFL season starting Canada Day weekend, late June, mid-June. What do you make about moving it? Gosh, it's darn near a full month up.
I think it's a great idea, and I need people that are lamenting the loss of a snow game to just calm down. Snow games should be rare. Like, they shouldn't be the staple of your league.
They'll be awfully rare, if at all, now.
Oh, I don't agree with that at all.
Well, when are you playing your Grey Cup now? First weekend in November?
Yeah.
So how many snow games are you getting in October?
In the prairies? Like,
I mean, the odd day in Regina, the odd day in Calgary or Edmonton.
Well, you're going to get one snow game per year, and that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Never getting a snow game out east.
No, but that's okay.
Lions start their opener this year, June 27th. So
their season opener is
June 27th? Season opener this year, not counting preseason. Their season opener, the touchdown Kelowna game. Yeah. Oh, sorry, June 13th.
Yeah.
June 13th.
Yeah,
My bad. June 13th. That's their first home game is the touchdown Kelowna game. Yeah. June 27th.
I mean, it's a weird year for
Leos
them.
played 2 games before that on the road in Saskatchewan and in Hamilton.
So it's a 3-week difference, basically.
Yeah.
The sport is better played when it's played normally. So
there are some who will argue that the weather acts as an equalizer for less talented teams. Yes.
You're still going to get inclement weather. You're going to get rain. You're going to get wind, all that sort of stuff. I don't need more than one snow game per year. If there's a season that goes by without a snow game, I'll be okay with that. It's about football. It's not about snow. So that in and of itself is not the biggest deterrent for me. The fact that it's long weekends, it adds another long weekend to the schedule. I think that's smart.
I agree. Now, you have backed it up to the point where the kids are in school now. So I do wonder about those Thursday night games early in the season. Whether they become a thing of the past, whether you have to be very spotty with how many Thursday night games you schedule early in the season, because now that's a school night with the kids in school.
It also perfectly now slides into the whole of Major League Soccer schedule for however many markets that might be overlapping. So they're the only field sport in that section for Toronto and Vancouver.
I will say this as someone who has covered late season big Canadian football games in a heated press box, as somebody who has been in the stands in cities like Calgary, Ottawa, freezing my tuchus off watching big CFL games down the stretch and in the postseason, and as somebody who delights in the snow globe game on their couch at home watching the playoffs, not to mention as a minor football player, I can remember, you knew when the weather turned cold, that was big game weather. For me, Canadian football is also about the elements and succeeding over the elements. So for me, something is lost here, Blake. CFL drafts go today, plural, Canadian College and the Global draft. The Lions have the 7th pick in the first rounds of both those drafts. Really have to do better. We love Thibaut Desbaye, the Belgian defensive lineman. We really got to do better in the Canadian College draft here. Lions need offensive line help as per usual. Now, like every year, the CFL draft now goes after the NFL draft because teams want clarity on where some of the Canadian players land in the NFL. Now, we talked about the 2 Canadian kids who were drafted by the LA Chargers in this past weekend's draft. There's also a bunch of Canadian kids who have signed undrafted free agent contracts, which typically means you go to training camp in the NFL. The first 3 there, Conga's a big defensive tackle from Louisville, Bailey's a rush end from Louisville, and Reese is an offensive tackle from Mississippi State. So they all played pretty big-time college football and have their opportunities with those NFL teams. You can see mini camp invites don't tend to mean a lot. You're not signed at that point. They typically will sign guys coming out of mini camp, but that could mean you're immediately available to the CFL. And so part of the exercise in the CFL draft, you get different draft boards. Here's one on simply the best players put together by TSN producer Cody Wiles. Mike, if we can bring that up. And there you see Akeem Messidor went in the first round of the NFL draft, is listed number 1. Logan Taylor was also drafted in the NFL. And then the rest of the board. So that's just purely best player available. And here's one from Ben Grant, who works with the Toronto Argonauts. And this is taking availability into account. And so you see he's got a defensive back from Michigan State. At the top of his board, a lot of those kids would be immediately available and in CFL training camps next month. Let's get to final results.
Are we going to deal with the playoffs?
Oh, playoffs. My bad. Yeah. Well, tell me about the playoff format.
So again, people will have issue with this. 8 of 9 teams. This is biggest need for an expansion ever now because 8 of 9 teams sounds terrible. Here's the thing. Here's where you can wrap your head around and make it seem better for you. It is seriously punitive if you are not first or second in your division. You got to win a lot of games. It's a long slog to make it to the Grey Cup if you're finishing third or fourth in your division. And it's not even about based on division, actually. It's just the top 8 teams. The top 8 teams in the league will make the playoffs. 1 versus 2, then play each other for the fast track to the divisional semifinal, divisional final, pardon me.
Yeah, league semifinals, divisional finals.
Yeah. So you win your first game if you're a good team, then you fast track to the division final. If you lose, you got to wait around and play the semifinal against the winner of the play-in game.
Play the
play-in
winner. You play the round 2 if you lose.
Yes, what would normally be called a semifinal game, if you will. Divisional semifinal, I guess. So
now works as a quarterfinal, I guess. Yeah.
So, the good teams now are being forced to play an extra game.
Mm-hmm.
The bad teams are as well. So that means you're going to have to win 1, 2, 3, 4 games to win the Grey Cup if you're a bad team. It's pretty punitive. So, are you in the playoffs? Yeah. But I would think about it more as really a contraction of the playoffs and an addition of a play-in game for the bad teams.
So do we still have East and West finals here?
No. It's just going to be...
But by the graphic, it shows me West Division on one side and East Division.
I guess because your ones and twos stay the same.
So you do have East and West finals. You're just not entirely sure it's going to be versus another Western team or another Eastern
Correct.
team.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because to me, that would be something lost if you didn't have the East and West final. I mean, I go back long enough with the CFL where, the East and West finals were a thing, but then you got to the Grey Cup, and typically if you lived out East, you worked for the East, you rooted for the East team and vice versa.
Right. The league semifinals will always have a host city in the West and a host city in the East.
Okay,
that's important.
That is very important.
That's important. Yeah.
That is very important. Thank you for that catch. I was about to move right along here. We're a busy day.
Yeah, seriously, lots.
Results of the final results of the poll question from yesterday. What's more important to the Canucks' future? Picking the right GM or the first overall pick? What did the people say?
GM.
They did? Percentage?
How many people got the exercise? I'll say 70.
58%. Jake, I'd rather fall to 3 with competent management than get the first overall pick with some mush attempt to assemble a roster around it. Yeah, well put. Hockey Forces still remember 1970. We missed out on Perreault. Settled for Talon. The rest was history. First overall pick is most important, especially on a generational player.
Trauma.
I'm not sure McKenna's generational hockey for, but I hear you. And our old friend Yerke weighs in, says the Canucks could survive a couple of years of bad GMing that inadvertently just gets them more draft capital while they toil in failure. See Benning, Jim. But pretty quickly you pivot into the management matters zone. Yes, agreed. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. Yes?
Oh, well, we've got something to talk about here.
Well, we have several.
Yeah.
I butchered all the names of the GM candidates. I had Ryan Doan and Shane Johnson and Ryan Doan Bonus and our
Donus
and our old friend Capspace Andy decided to weigh in on that and said the Doan Bonus Johnson mess is worthy of an ease and O's. Blake got you first, Sakaris. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. I had the C's playing Eugene this week. No, they're playing Hillsborough. And Bud Clark, Seahawks safety, is the draft pick who said he models his game after ex-Seahawk and legendary hard-hitting safety Cam Chancellor.
In addition, I went on a rant about how common sense with regards to the goal call, common sense is not in the rule book, but they used it, to which Yerke pointed out, actually, it is in the rule.
Common sense is now in the rule book. Everybody, breaking news.
It's not a rule per se, but it's in the glossary of terms because they have now inserted the phrase common sense into a lot of the rules, basically giving the referees an out to sculpt the rule to see fit.
Yeah. So this is in relation to the puck over the goal line in the Anaheim Edmonton game. The puck is obscured, but it is absolutely plain as day to everybody who knows what a hockey puck looks like that it is fully crossed the line.
So this is the
there
first
was
year
a world where, because it's obscured and you can't prove
it
beyond
may be
a
on the
shadow of
line
a doubt that it's not fully crossed the goal line, even though it stood to reason. That was the old way of doing things. Now we use common sense.
Here's how they define it. NHL officials are empowered to use common sense.
Good.
This applies to any situation or rule that isn't explicitly covered in the rule literature.
Marvelous.
You may fill gaps in the NHL rulebook with the gray matter.
Good. I like the rule literature.
Yes.
Very well put,
yes.
NHL. I abide. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about and keep it local.